ready to start our evening. I believe Morris has got a couple of words to say to you as we begin. Go ahead, Morris.
Okay, it's a good crowd. Welcome, everyone. As we all know why we're here, this town hall meeting is an opportunity for you, the citizens of the communities, to express your concerns in the discussions around shale gas, and we'll probably have time to discuss other issues as well. I'm an executive member with the Fredericton District Labour Council, and work very closely with the Labour Council and different unions and locals throughout the city of Fredericton. But this is partnered with the Labour Council, Unifor, and Canadian Council is helping to put this on. But it's an open forum for you people to have a chance to have some information from what has been researched in this subject, and to provide your input back on what you people think of the shale gas movement. And it's an open forum, and like I said, there will be other issues that will probably be discussed as well. I know there have been at the other meetings that we've had. So I just want everybody to relax. There's going to be some information presented to you, and it'll give you a chance to make your own informed opinion of what you think of this whole situation that we have had in the media for many, many months now. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Megan, and we'll get started. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, I love this mic. It goes way down here. It's perfect. All right, first of all, my name is Maggie Connell. I'm a member, a very proud member of the Council of Canadians of Fredericton chapter. And I taught school for 100 years, so I've got a degree in crowd control. So I'm the person who will do that tonight. We have so many good people to come and share information with us that we could keep you here till tomorrow morning at least. But in order to make this part, the presentation part of the evening, not overshadow the main event, which is to hear from you folks about the direction you would like to see New Brunswick go in. So in order to do that, I've got a little timer, and it's going to ring at the end of the time allotted for each of the presentations. So the Voice of the People Tour, as Morris explained, is an initiative of volunteers from all across the province. I've been amazed these last 3 or 4 years at the power that can come together when people join forces in a common cause. It's very inspiring. So we've got Nebraska, New Brunswick Against Shale Gas Alliance. We've got the Council of Canadians of Fredericton chapter, Unifor, as Morris said, and the Fredericton District Labour Council as well, all coming together to bring this Voice of the People tour. So we've been going around the province to different communities, getting feedback from folks like you as to the direction they would like to see this province go in. And it's, as I said, at the very least, inspiring. So first of all, it's to share over the thousands of hours that these volunteers have put into learning about shale gas, learning about the alternatives to shale gas. We've understood a whole pile of things that we didn't know before, so we want to share that with you, because as you might guess, we don't exactly have equal access to media. So the way we can get that information to you is to get you to come to meetings like this. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. Most importantly, it's about your voice. So very quickly, I'll tell you about the structure of the evening. We'll have a presentation on shale gas that will be 40 minutes long. The buzzer will ring at that time. Jim Emberger from Nebraska is going to bring you two parts to this presentation. First of all, he's going to present to you some peer-reviewed scientific evidence of the harmful effects of the shale gas industry. Secondly, well, this is like, the first part is about scientists extrapolating and understanding using the scientific laws what will happen if shale gas comes. The second part of Jim's presentation is about what has already happened to communities like ours in other jurisdictions who have gone this route and what they have evidenced. And really the unlikelihood of us ever realizing the job and economic benefits that the government is promising. So after we've completely depressed you with that, we'll go on to the second presentation, which hopefully offers you some hope. And who's doing the second part? Jean-Louis, is it you tonight? Okay, Jean-Louis Deveau will be bringing you just a different viewpoint on, do we really have to go this route? Is there another way? Because the government says there's not. We disagree. So that'll be 20 minutes. The buzzer will ring then. And then we come to the most important part of the evening. It will be just after 8 o'clock by that time, and that will be your voice. And we want you to consider consider all of the information that you are hearing tonight, but please do share with us your questions, your concerns, and maybe even if you just want to make a statement about how you feel about that, that's fine. Consider what you want in your backyard, whether or not you feel you have a voice in our democracy. And very importantly, how can we create jobs here in New Brunswick without forfeiting the well-being of our families now and the future? So there's a microphone there. You'll be able to come to the mic. You'll have exactly 5 minutes there. If you want to give an opinion, it'll be 5 minutes, and then you'll be shuffled out while the next person comes in. If you have a question, keep your question fairly short so that someone can answer you within that 5-minute allotted time. While you're sharing, where's the red dot pole? Oh, it's over there. You see the Bristol boards over on the wall there, the poster boards. While you're sharing, someone will record, not with your name, but just record the main idea of what you are telling us. And it's kind of like a poll of priorities that are specific to this community. We've done this in every community we've been in, and it's really an important piece because it provides us with information that we will use as we move forward into these elections. At the end of the evening, you'll receive 5 little red dots, like those office label stickers, and you'll be able to go over and vote for what you think is most important for you. Okay? So that way we get an unofficial tally of how people feel. Notes very quickly, there's a donation box at the back. As I said, this is all volunteer. A donation box helps us to pay for, defray the costs of the venue and providing tea and coffee. So any bit of help you can give towards that will certainly be appreciated if you can manage it. There are other functions besides this happening in the near future, and as we move closer and closer to the election. I don't remember a time when it's been this hot politically in this province. It's awesome. So maybe at the end of the evening, before you leave, I'll give you a little rundown of other things you can take in as we move forward. So for now, Jim, this is it's your turn, and this is Jim Efriger. He has a wealth of information. I'll keep you here till next week. I won't let it.
Turn your password. Oh, sure. Brief intro.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming this evening. I'm Jim Berger with the New Brunswick Anti-Shale Gas Alliance. We are a volunteer group, self-supporting, and have been working for about several years, and just recently, in the last 2, we became the New Brunswick Anti-Shale Gas Alliance. We have just a small presence here tonight at the tables in the back, but I just want to tell you 2 things about us, is that we have our strategy includes 2 different prongs to fight shale gas. The first is that we want to educate the public, which is why we're here tonight. And to that end, we have also created something called the Citizens Guide to Shale Gas, which is a pretty comprehensive compilation of the science-based and independent research of everything having to do with shale gas in a form that is readable for the general public. And you can check that out back at our table back there, and also go online at our website, which is noshalegasnb.ca, which you can also get back there, and you can download the information at your convenience. The second thing is that we have for a number of years been collecting money to mount as sort of a last resort, a legal challenge to shale gas in the province, and we have just recently reached our goal of $100,000, which has all come in from individual donations, which is enough to get us going, and we'll be hiring a lawyer and attorneys in the very near future, but certainly we are going to need money to bring in expert witnesses, etc. So we also will take donations for the legal fund back at our table, and also there's a paper there that tells you how you can make donations online using PayPal or sending us a check. That's all the promo I'm doing for now. And we're doing things out of order here tonight because we had the wonderful Granny singing and a guest speaker. So normally what I'm going to show you next, we play while the audience is settling down. So I may abbreviate it a little bit, but we usually introduce it as, these are, while you're waiting, here are some coming attractions for New Brunswick. Mine's just about 2 minutes.
This is the entrance to the pad. So we got the guards here. This is Cabot. This is one of our farms, Chenango Street stores at multi-generational farm. Guards, the access road. Look at the road, it's just caved in on the side here. I can barely have any room to drive. And this is just outside of Montrose Borough. And you see at this point, I should clock it, so maybe half a mile. And we're waiting to go in all the water trucks. This just came in through the middle of our town. These trucks just came in from where our courthouse is. This is what you can expect when you have the industry here. Sand trucks are just basic. These are sand trucks. See those? The longer they're cut out one. Here's the road again, caved in. I gotta watch. Oh man. This is what you can expect when they work on an area. Oh, it's Baker Hughes. There's Baker Hughes. Say hi to them. Hi. How's it going over there with the fracking? Do you know how many more days? No? How do you like the road condition here? Is Baker Hughes paying for it or Cabot? No? The wrong person asked? You don't live on this road, of course. Thanks.
Which way? Sludge. Very good. Well, what we just watched was one morning's traffic from one frac of one day. This was filmed just about 2 months ago, and I skipped the part where they showed all the resulting road damage just because of the time consideration tonight. But this was not a documentary, this is just a home video of people in the area. Now, to understand how this came about and also everything else that I'm going to talk to you tonight, you really only have to understand the next 3 slides. What I'm going to tell you first is the difference between conventional and unconventional, or shale gas. Now, in conventional wells, which are those to your right, they are drilled generally in soft sandstone, which is a porous rock, which allows the gas to flow through it easily, and the gas can also be held in it. It's kind of like a sponge. So because the gas can flow and it's lighter than air, it generally accumulates in pockets that is very easily taken out with a vertical weld down into the pocket. And when you reverse the pressure and pull the gas out, because it flows through the rock, you can drain a very large area with a single well. Shale gas, however, is in limestone, which is a hard rock. There are no pores to speak of. The gas does not move through it. So the only way that you can get gas out of it is to shatter the rock. The gas is in the rock at molecular level, basically. So you have to shatter the rock, first with explosives, and then forcing water under pressure with sand, etc., to hold the fractures open. The important thing to remember about this is that because of that, you only get the gas that's right around the well, because it doesn't flow from anywhere else. The gas does not come to you. You have to go to the gas. This means that you have to drill many, many, many wells, each of which generally is many kilometers long. Now, you may have heard the government tell you and the industry say that, well, you know, there's nothing to worry about. You know, we've been fracking wells of all kinds for 60 years. You know, well, this is true. However, this is what a frac looked like 60 years ago. You'll note that it took about 1,000 gallons of fluid, and it was about 800 meters deep. But the process that we used to drill for shale gas, which is properly called, I'll give you the mouth-filling name, high volume slick water hydraulic fracturing of long laterals on multi-well well pads. And this is why it has that name, because here is a modern frac. As opposed to 1,000 gallons of water, we're talking 417 million gallons of water was used on this well pad. 8 million gallons of fracking chemicals, plus lots of pressure and miles-long wells. Well, to say that, as the government does, that these two things are comparable is like saying that flying the Wright brothers' first biplane is no more complicated than flying, it's just as complicated as flying a B-52 bomber. It's just not a good comparison. It's just a way of playing with words. But of the many differences between these two kinds of fracs, there are two that stand out in importance. One is the need for vast amounts of water, as you can see in our preview. And that's why you have those hundreds and hundreds of water trucks that were being used for just a single frac. The second thing is that, as you see here, they had to add a variety of chemicals to the fracking fluid. In this case, 8 million gallons over all the fracs they did on the site. And if you want to go, and that's why they call this slick water fracturing. And if you want to go from a single well pad to what it looks like in a developed area, this is an actual industry map. This is not anything that some environmentalist made up or anything. It's from Chesapeake Energy, which shows a 30 square mile plat. Each one of those little red dots up there is a well pad, 53 of them. And every little red line you see on there is a well. This is not an exaggeration. You know, when I said that you have to go to the gas, that's what I'm talking about. You have to go to every inch that the gas is in order to get it out. Well, that brings us to our agenda tonight. We want to talk about what effects this has on everything. I'm going to spend just about 10 minutes approximately on each one of these subject areas, which are basically the cost of hosting shale gas, the health risks that are involved, the regulation of the industry, and the jobs and economic benefits, if any. Well, we're often told the benefits of shale gas all the time, but we seldom hear of things that would come out as cost of hosting this industry. Certainly it's not discussed in public, and certainly the government never brings it up. Well, one of these costs is the destruction of roads and bridges and infrastructure, as you saw in our first video. And we have found from places elsewhere that this can be an enormous cost to the jurisdiction. Up here are reports from 3 of the areas that host shale gas. The figures in red at the bottom are the amount of money that these jurisdictions had to spend on road and bridge repair caused just by the oil and gas industry, nothing else. The black figures above are how many dollars that they made from the industry. And as you can see, in all 3 of these cases, the cost exceeds the money they actually made off of shale gas for these costs. Now, visualize the traffic that we just saw a few minutes ago on the roads around here. Add emergency vehicles, school buses, cargo transport trucks, daily commuters, tourists with tour buses and hauling trailers, and just like impatient drivers. And as you can see, this is quite a recipe for disaster. Now, every taxpayer in New Brunswick is going to pay for this. It doesn't matter whether you live in a shale gas area or not, because the money to pay for the road repairs comes from us all. And so even if you don't live in an area, chances are that you're going to find the maintenance on your roads has decreased as well. Now, those of us living in the shale gas areas are also going to have to endure the physical dangers, the accidents, the increased maintenance to our own vehicles, just from trying to get from point A to point B in our own communities. Now, these awful road conditions affect more than just your regular drive. They will also be a cost and a deterrent to one of the chief industries in New Brunswick, and which provides much income and many jobs, and that's the industry of tourism. As you can see, 35,000 jobs annually in this business, and $110 million in tax revenues, plus a huge amount to our GDP, equivalent to many of our other industries. It not only is it important economically, but it's also part of our heritage, our self-image, etc. Now, with all this going on, you can see that the government is already working on our new image, because this is actually the cover of a flyer for their latest conference on resource extraction, with the imposition of the derricks on top of the Hopewell rocks. Well, we noticed that as we looked at where the shale gas areas are, that they are in our prime tourist areas. I mean, imagine that traffic you just saw on the similar roads leading to the Bay of Fundy, Kushabaquack, Grand Lake, or even heading up Route 8 to the Nashwauk River to do some tubing. How many tourists will come back after having endured a day or two of that kind of traffic? And it's not just the roads that will hurt tourism. We're also going to have the industrialization of the rural landscape. How many of you are hunters, or fishermen, or snowmobilers, or just hikers and recreation people? Well, you're going to have to deal with a cutting up of the landscape into small pieces, many of which will make it inaccessible for things like hunting and snowmobiling. This fragmentation that you see here now is in Grand Prairie, Alberta, where this is a 10 square kilometer area. Now, each one of those little white squares there is a shale gas well. I counted about 80 before my eyes crossed. And all the little white lines in between them are pipelines and roads and access roads and parking facilities, etc. Now, it's interesting to note that our neighbor to the east, Newfoundland, has called for a moratorium on shale gas, based pretty much, almost entirely, I think, on the fact that they realized what this would do to the tourism industry centered around Grossmoor National Park, which is sort of their crown jewel, and that's where they wanted to start doing some exploration for fracking. As you can see in the map of New Brunswick, everything in color there in the squares is a lease area. It's about 20% of our land mass, and it includes most of our most beautiful and productive areas. And even if you don't live in one of those lease areas, you know, I'm sure your families or friends do, and you'll be traveling through them, but also you do things like get your food from these areas. Well, the government never discusses, you know, the fact that these existing industries, like tourism and agriculture, you know, will be affected negatively by this new industry. And agriculture will be affected. Everything from, you know, sickened livestock to the refusal of restaurants to purchase food from farms that are next to shale gas areas because of the air pollution that settles out on the crops. So these industries have faces too. I mean, they're New Brunswickers like you and me working hard to make a living, and their jobs could quite likely be lost. Now, the Minister of Energy has said that one good thing is that the shale gas royalties will help our medical system. I'm not sure how he comes to that conclusion, because we find that it will be a detriment to the province. Delivery of health services is going to be negatively impacted by a number of things. Lots of people moving to this province from elsewhere are looking for jobs. The illnesses that will be caused by the substances in shale gas, which we'll get to in a little while, but also by the fact that this is the most dangerous industry in North America. The Center for Disease Control says that the oil and gas field industry is 7 times higher fatality rate than the average of all industries. Well, in New Brunswick, it's only our Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Cleary, who has discussed any of these other costs in any depth. And one of the things she said was that we have such little experience in New Brunswick with these kind of things that we need to go look at places where they've been living with this for a while. And she suggested the states in the United States who are dealing with it. So taking her advice, we went and looked at what's happening in the States. This is from the Bakken Shale in North Dakota. The 12 hospitals in the area where they started fracking suddenly experienced all the things that you see here. Their emergency room visits quadrupled, doubling of traumatic industries, 60% increase in the amount of ambulance calls. And importantly for us all is that they saw their combined debt rise 46%. Well, this is the U.S. where they have private hospitals. Here in New Brunswick, you know, we're civilized, we have socialized medicine, which means, unfortunately, that the costs are socialized as well, and that we will be paying these increased hospital costs. In Pennsylvania, we found that hospitals said that their emergency services were delayed, their vehicles were damaged, and their staff was stressed out because of their safety. And often the hospitals themselves found themselves almost inaccessible at certain times of day because of the traffic conditions that were created that you saw earlier in the movie. Well, other unexamined socioeconomic costs that we're not really going to get into tonight because we don't have time, but include things like crime, drugs, and prostitution that increase everywhere this industry goes. It's typical boom-bust economic social conditions. As well, homelessness and poverty increase in these areas because there's a skyrocketing cost of living and makes a bigger gap between the wealthy and the poor. While it's not a problem for the people who have the good jobs on the gas rigs, these higher costs of everyday living, especially the big one is the increase in rents, which have been known to quadruple in areas where we have shale gas. You know, it's the old supply and demand thing. So, you know, relatives who might have been renting a place for $600 a month suddenly find their rents are $3,000 a month. So people who live on fixed incomes or are working poor or even lower middle class really will struggle if this industry comes to town. And once again, we all share in all those increased costs that come with these socioeconomic ills and stresses on our social welfare system. Now, Dr. Cleary's report, obviously, being what it is, focuses most of his attention on the direct human cost of shale gas. And since it began, everywhere where we have shale gas, people have experienced the same symptoms: nosebleeds, headaches, rashes, dizziness, and stomach problems. Diagnoses of respiratory and neurological diseases and strange cancers often follow. And although workers get to go home at the end of their shift, we find that workers suffer many of these same problems as those people living near gas wells. Well, we have a lot of new studies that have come out very recently. I'm talking about within the last couple of months. Researchers at MIT, Princeton, the University of Colorado, and other places have found that the unborn and that the newly born are seen to be at special risk from this industry. Living near a gas well has been associated with the low birth weight of infants, poor infant health, and particularly to congenital heart defects. A study from the University of Missouri found that there are these substances, which you may or may not have heard of, called endocrine disruptors, which are simply substances in very tiny amounts, we're talking parts per billion in some cases, have huge effect on the endocrine system of the body, which affects things in particular like brain development and reproduction. Once again, putting particularly the youngborn and young children at high risk. And we know for a fact that these substances increase the closer you get to, they studied the rivers and the wetlands, and the closer that you get to a gas well, the more of these endocrine disruptors you find. And we know that many of the chemicals used in fracking are endocrine disruptors. But anyway, the consistent warnings, these red flags going up by all these studies, added to the historical evidence that everywhere there's been shale gas, there have been similar problems, have led health professionals everywhere to say, let's call a halt to this, let's have a moratorium. And our physicians in New Brunswick have been no different. This is just a partial list of all the health and medical associations in New Brunswick who have called for a moratorium. And the other thing that they call for, along with this, and also called for by all the studies I mentioned, is that we need to have long-term studies. And there's a good reason for that, because so far we've only had one long-term population-based study. And it's several years old now, but it lasted 3 years and was done out in Colorado. And here's what it found. That if you live within a half mile, 800 meters or so, of a gas well, you are at a highly increased risk of developing some cancers and some neurological and respiratory problems. Now, they were very careful to state that they weren't saying it was safe beyond a half mile, but only that they measured out a half mile as far as they went. And they also stated that because they ran into so many chemicals that there was absolutely no information on, that they probably underestimated the problem. Now, this report has been out for a while, as I said. It was out when we put in our new strict rules for industry. And yet, this is what the rules of industry allow. You know, they will allow you to put a gas well within 250 meters of your home or of a playground, within 500 meters of a school, a hospital, you know, or a senior's home. To put in a little graphics in there, that maybe is a little easier to see, that they will allow companies to put gas wells much closer to your home than would be recommended by the medical profession. If I add the new studies in that just came out, these studies say in some of them that the danger goes out to 1 kilometer, another one says it goes out to 2.5 kilometers, and the one on endocrine disruptors say that it goes out to as much as 16 kilometers. And now this disconnect between the science and what our regulations allow also extends to what they said about water, which is the subject that everybody talks about. Well, the water wells can be as close to a gas well, once again, as 250 meters to your private well, and within 500 meters of a municipal well. But here's the science about that. Multiple studies by Duke University have found that within a kilometer of a gas well, that you're highly likely to have contamination by methane and ethane. A study from the University of Texas said that within 3 kilometers they found that normally occurring toxic substances that are in the ground that are just there not bothering anybody get mobilized by the gas drilling process and end up also in groundwater. So, we have to wait for just a second because it's got to sink in that our premier and our Minister of Energy, keep going around saying that we have the strictest rules. They're going to protect us. It's safe because we have these strict rules. Well, strictness is kind of a comparative term. You don't know what it means unless you know everything else that it's compared to. And then if you look at the fact that every state and every province who has shale gas says that their regulations are the strictest, pretty soon you realize it's a meaningless word. But we also then go even further, and our premier says, well, yes, but all our rules are based on best practices. Well, we have the same problem again. Best is a comparative word. If you look in a dictionary, best is not a synonym for safe or effective or scientifically sound. At most, what you could say is that best means state of the art. And that's a term that we can actually shed a little light on. So strict practices and strict rules and best practices, just won't cut it. What we need are safe and scientifically sound practices, and ours clearly are not. But in any case, rules and regulations in no place have been able to have been able to stop the problems associated with shale gas. Now the industry says, well, there's no proven link between fracking and the subsequent contamination of groundwater by fracking. It just hasn't happened. Well, what they mean, they're kind of playing with words, because they're saying that there's been no proven court case that has linked the few moments that a frac actually takes place with subsequent contamination, of a well, somewhere away. Well, it's kind of playing with words because, nobody really knows yet what happens to the water, the fluids that are in the ground at the exact moment of a frac. They don't know any more than I do. But there are geologists who say that if there's any area that needs more long-term study, this is it. Because it's not a question of if this stuff will come back up to the surface. It's a question of when. And it might be, a year, 2 years, 10 years, 25 years. We could be leaving some nasty surprises for our children to find one day. But what about everything that happens outside the frac? Is anything there cause any contamination? Well, industry has known for decades, and this is from industry publications, that 1 in every 20 wells, that's 5% of all wells, leak in their first year. Over a period of 5 years, that goes up to about 30%. We currently have wells leaking down in Penobscot. In Quebec, before they put their moratorium in, they found they had 19 of their 35 wells were leaking. So despite decades of trying, the industry has not been able to solve this problem. And in fact, it's getting a little worse. And regulations don't do anything to change the laws of physics, chemistry, and geology. It's possible that these problems are unsolvable. But there are many other causes of contamination that aren't specifically linked directly to fracking, but are part of the shale gas process and have been documented by scientific studies, regulatory agencies, and court cases. We have well failures, which just means basically the casing around the wells fails. Now, industry itself says that they lose basically $1 billion a day worldwide because of leaks of this sort, where the well casings fail. We have fractures that occur naturally in the ground, and when you do your fracking of the area, if those two intersect, that provides a path for the contaminants to come to the surface. The same way as if your frac intersects an existing well. And God knows in New Brunswick we probably have thousands of wells that nobody knows about because we've been drilling them here for hundreds of years, water wells and every other kind. Yeah? And finally, and surprising to a lot of people, but most contamination problems come from things that don't even happen underground. They happen above ground. Things like blowouts. You remember the BP Gulf of Mexico incident? That was a blowout. They used huge pressures in extracting this gas to break the rock. Well, if that's not handled exactly right, it blows the top of the well off. Everything that was down there comes shooting out with it. Then we have simple things like leaking storage tanks, leaking pipes, and then a very big one that a lot of people often don't consider either is the one on the far side there, is truck accidents. And not just truck accidents, but unfortunately also illegal dumping is a fairly large problem on these back roads in the countries where they have shale gas. So all of these have been proven to cause contamination, and all occur at the same rates and the same quantities everywhere shale gas exists. Now, one of these problems, the wastewater, which is kind of included by the truck there, seems very resistant to any kind of solution. And regulation, because the extraction of shale gas requires an enormous amount of water, as we saw at the beginning. Well, all that water's got to come back out, and when it comes back out, it's toxic wastewater. Now, industry likes to say that, well, only 1.5% of the fracking fluid are these chemicals. 1.5% of a 4 million liter frac is still 60,000 liters of toxic substances that you're shooting into the ground with every frac. When the frac water comes back up, it also has all the toxic chemicals that normally exist in the ground that you've now brought up with it, and quite often the water is radioactive. So how do you dispose of it? Well, there really are no good ways to dispose of it. There's only ways that are less bad than others. And in New Brunswick, we've eliminated the worst ways to do it. But unfortunately, that left us with one answer, is that the fracking that we would do here now, we used to send to Barrett, Nova Scotia, in order for them to process it. But a couple months ago, basically Nova Scotia said they'd had enough, that if New Brunswick wants to do their fracking, they're going to have to deal with their own frack water. They don't want it there anymore. Actually, this is a good example of another problem with wastewater, is that in DeBert over the winter, they also had a leak from their stored frack water of about 1.5 million liters. So wastewater spills have been one of those common ways to cause contamination, and some of the worst damage from these things, once again documented by scientific studies, as when it has spilled in water, it has caused massive fish kills and has essentially wiped out all aquatic life in places where it's been spilled. When it's been spilled on land, it kills all the vegetation. Farm animals, wildlife, and pets have all passed away as a result of that. Well, why are these spills and the contamination so bad? Well, the industry likes to portray, and this is a direct quote from their presentation, like to portray all their chemicals as ingredients you can find in ice cream and in home cleaning products. Well, I always had the question I want to answer is, well, if that's true, if it's all ice cream stuff, why do you have to keep it a secret? Because in New Brunswick, it is kept a secret. You cannot find out the chemicals in a fracking job until 30 days after the job is over. Well, the truth is that the universe of fracking chemicals is about 650 chemicals and about 1,000 different combinations. Many of them we already know have adverse health effects. Most have never been tested, and virtually none of them have been tested in the combinations, almost the limitless number of combinations you put together. This is a point some people don't think about. The combinations are really important. As an example, using household cleaning things. If you take your household bleach and you take your household ammonia window cleaner and you put them together, the resulting gas will kill you. So it's an important distinction. I'd like you to think about the process that a single drug that your doctor prescribes for you has to go through before he's allowed to put that in your body. It has to go through years, occasionally even a decade or so, of stringent testing. And yet these fossil fuel chemicals, these fracking chemicals, will enter our bodies 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through our air and water. And it's not just through accidents and leaks, etc., but just through the normal everyday process of shale gas. I got the 10-minute mark here. I'm switch gears. The 10-minute mark. I'll get back to this here. That these chemicals are just the normal process that goes through normal shale gas extraction. This is a few of the chemicals. Real quickly, these were taken from Pennsylvania, where they took 54 known chemicals, and you can see the chart there. I'm not going to go into the detail, but of those, the number up there, 34 of them are water soluble. And you can look at the number of the chemicals and what they affect in our bodies. But as bad as that looks, Theo Colburn, an expert in this field, said that while water contamination is a possibility, air pollution is a certainty, because we all breathe 24 hours a day. And air pollution is actually emerging as the leading suspect in all the illnesses caused by shale gas. In fact, the recent study just found that the methods and standards that we use to measure this stuff are inadequate. And you're not safe anywhere, as you can see, because this stuff will travel hundreds of kilometers, so you're at risk anywhere you go. Quick one, these are the ones that travel through air. They do the same thing. And air pollution in a number of rural areas in the United States that have no other industry but shale gas now have the worst pollution in North America. So in 2014, the University of Colorado did a review of all the known health studies and came up with this. They said that, despite all our concern, there are no studies out there. And they concluded that, obviously we need to do this before we jump into the industry. This is the same thing that Dr. Cleary says. It's the same thing that Dr. Goldstein, who visited our Energy Institute last week, said the same thing. And we know it's even worse than that, because most settlements of shale gas contamination cases contain gag orders where the people are not allowed to talk about what happened. Fortunately, last week, we finally had the first one to come through the court systems in Texas where there was no gag order, and they awarded $3 million to people based on contamination of their water, damage to their health and to their livestock and to the environment. I have to do a quick one here about the industry. You got to remember that it wouldn't even exist had they not gotten themselves exempted from all these strict regulations in the United States, federal regulations. So the question always is, well, if it's so safe, why do they have to get exempted? I think until that is answered, there's nothing anyone can do to convince me. Either it means they can't make it safe, or it will be so expensive that if they made it safe, they couldn't afford to do it. Now, despite everything that I told you here, our Minister Leonard says that, we're all misinformed. So I just wanted to add you, besides the physicians, here are some of the other people who are misinformed. All these municipalities in New Brunswick, our friends of the unions, rural associations, religious organizations, and these are just the community organizations in New Brunswick who are misinformed. Now, that doesn't include Newfoundland, PEI, Nova Scotia, Quebec, New York, Vermont, all who have moratoriums of one kind or another. So apparently, New Brunswick is the only place that has any informed people in our government. And the biggest thing, though, is that the most opposition to shale gas has come from places that already have it there, not places like New Brunswick. So down in Pennsylvania, the Democratic Party now has added a moratorium to their party platform. We have in Colorado 4 major municipalities passing moratoriums. Now, even in Texas, they're passing moratoriums. So it ought to give us reason to stop and think, because these are the people who are the most informed. If they want to do this, perhaps we should think about it. But the biggest thing of misinformation is that our government isn't even informed on the biggest problem of our time, which is climate change. Last week, this magazine coverage from 2 years ago, it's already outdated. Last week or two ago, the IPCC came out and said, look, time's up. We got 5 to 15 years to limit our fossil fuel usage, or we're going to usher in uncontrolled climate change, not just in our children's lifetime, but possibly in our own. And we need to leave 2/3 of all the fossil fuels that we know exist in the ground. Now, how much more insane can you get than hearing that and then taking the position that you're going to base the future of our province on an industry that we're going to have to eliminate in a couple years? So, why are we arguing about this? We shouldn't be doing it. And this is coming to the last part here, Maggie, so you'll be happy. And why are we being asked to risk our health and our children's future? Well, we're told for jobs and the economy. Well, we know a little bit about jobs here. This is the 5 major shale gas plays in North America. You can see the chart going this way is how many years these wells have been drilled. You can see that within 5 years, these wells are basically played out. They lose anywhere from 65 to 80% of their gas in the first year. The whole play in general usually peaks at about 4 or 5 years. What's important about that? Well, that means that there's less gas every year after that, which means you have fewer royalties. Here's an example in Texas, where they've drilled 9 times as many wells over a 4-year period, and yet saw the royalties drop 50%. Here in New Brunswick, we have royalties too. This is from the 40 gas and oil wells we have existing here now. If you add those royalties from those 2 industries together, it's about the same amount of money we make from sand and gravel. Well, maybe we have these industries because they bring us jobs. Well, maybe not. We have 16 producing oil wells down in the Stony Creek area, 2 employees. We have gas wells down in Penobscot, 19 of them. We got 8 employees. Well, what we know, and this is just one example for many, is that gas produces the fewest amount of jobs of any energy-related industry. Look down there at retrofitting, which are jobs that we could have tomorrow if we wanted them, 5 times as many jobs. Well, we have research coming out now from places where they actually have done the industry, and they say this is on the Marcellus Shale, 6 states that make up that. The economists down there say that, well, it made a negligible difference on job growth, and in fact, we only created 4 jobs per well. But we have Minister Leonard running around with the Deloitte report where it projects that we're going to have 21 jobs per well. Why the difference? Well, the people down there say that, well, we know why ours are right because we're using figures from things that have actually happened, not what the industry thought would happen. And they even supply a reason for that. They say, well, you know, the industry promotes jobs because it's a way of escaping examination of royalties and taxation and even the industry itself. And if you pay any attention to what's happened in our province, you know that that's true. The one thing the government says about shale gas, jobs, 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 jobs. Nothing else gets talked about. Well, let's put this up against the last 2 minutes of the presentation here. Let's compare this to what's happened down south of this in Massachusetts, where at the same time Pennsylvania went to a clean energy economy, went to a shale gas economy, they put in a clean energy economy plan. With half the population of Pennsylvania, they created almost 3 times as many jobs, almost 80,000 there versus 30,000 or so in Pennsylvania. And these were the kind of jobs that went in every geographical area of the state, not just where the gas was being drilled. And they were through all parts of the sector. Good jobs, like these. Jobs that people who live in Alberta now, that we want to bring home, already have. You know, it's possible to bring our people back to the province to good, safe, permanent jobs, rather than dangerous jobs that will disappear once the gas well has been dug and the company moves on. So, while many people have said that shale gas is a bridge to the future, our characteristic of it is that instead it is a bridge to nowhere and a gangplank to disaster. And did I beat the bell, Maggie?
Honestly, it's about 30 seconds.
All right.
I feel like a heel. I could listen half the night here too. He's got so much more information than that as well. So thank you, Jim. Very good job. And how you timed that like that, I'll never know. So the next part of the evening will be our... Okay. The next part of the evening will be our presentation on something else we might want to look at instead of shale gas, and places where it's been very successful and has a better business case, really. While I'm waiting for them to get that up and running, I'll tell you about an event that is happening on Saturday in Moncton. It's an amazing opportunity to hear Charles Theriault. I am wondering if you have seen his work on his website, Is Our Forest Really Ours? He will be with Don Bowser, who's an international anti-corruption and transparency expert, who will come to just have a little commentary about our New Brunswick government. So it should be very interesting in Moncton. We have the details at the back table there on Saturday. What time does that start? Who knows? 1:30 on Saturday, but the details are at the back. Okay, all set? All right. Okay, we're ready to go. Jean-Louis Deveau will bring you to the next portion here.
Well, good evening, everybody. Bonsoir tout le monde. My name is Jean-Louis Deveau, and I'm with the Fredericton chapter of the Council of Canadians. So, tonight, my presentation, and I promise I'm not going to keep you very long, it's about how to plug leaky buckets, something that all New Brunswickers, I'm sure, are familiar with. For years now, I'm sure that most of you are aware that New Brunswick's economic development policies have been about encouraging private industry to invest in what we call the dig it up, cut it down, and ship it out economy. But other jurisdictions in Canada, as well as across the world, are doing exactly the same thing. So for us to be competitive it often entails what economists call a race to the bottom in terms of who can offer the lowest corporate taxes, the largest subsidies, and the least stringent regulations. The outcome, of course, is less revenues for our government coffers to maintain our social programs. And it was confirmed to us that this is exactly the case. I went this past weekend, I went to the Liberal convention, the Liberal Party convention, policy convention here in Fredericton, as an observer. And they had invited through Skype a gentleman, a doctor, who basically said the same thing. He said that here in Canada, we expect the lowest taxes possible to be comparable with the United States. Yet, we expect the same kind of social services as they offer in Europe. But of course, that doesn't work. So that confirmation, it was good to have that confirmation on the weekend. Imagine, if you wish, our economy being that of a leaky bucket, a marketing term first coined by Andrew Ehrenberg. Now, money that's spent outside of the bucket is money that we don't have to support our social programs and money that we don't have to create jobs. Now, there's two ways of keeping water in a leaky bucket. One way is to pour water faster than it escapes, and of course the other way is plug the hose, right? Plug the hose. In 2000, in the year 2000, the Peace and Justice Center of Burlington, Vermont published a report called The Leaky Bucket, an analysis of Vermont's dependence on imports. This report that you see here. In this report, they identified a whole bunch of areas where money is escaping from their economy. That's the column that you see that has all the red numbers in it. Now, let's consider what's happening in New Brunswick. Many of you, I'm sure, are still paying mortgages. We all need to buy clothes. We all need to pay for our energy costs, and we all need to pay food. How much of that money that we spend for all of these necessities stays in New Brunswick? Our mortgages, does the money stay in New Brunswick, or does it end up somewhere on Bay Street, in Toronto? Our food, how much of that money that we spend for food actually stays here in New Brunswick? There has been a study which suggests that farmers in the Maritimes only get 13 cents out of every dollar that we spend at the grocery store. Now imagine if we could use some of that money to help promote more jobs, more opportunities in our own province.